when we were talking about when we were talking about the male exercise, and the first thing, or one of the first things that I shouted out was the truth. The one thing that I happened to notice that was very absent from those statistics were how many men were actually affected by domestic violence. We don't talk about that.
1 in 4.
No, I got 1 in 4, but that was one little small stat. Everything else is women, 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 women. Also, parental alienation. These things that affect men that cause them to commit suicide, when that becomes the option. You know, we even talked about the things that men aren't supposed to talk about, such as being victims. Victims of the criminal justice system, where because of the red flag law, what I see, okay, granted, I get the need behind it, I get the necessity, but there are no provisions within what I saw in the red flag law that stop someone with malicious intent from trying to take those firearms.
That's just not true. That's not true, man. There's a class 4 felony.
Hold on, please.
You got it. You're right. My mistake.
Please. Because having been the victim of someone filing, not a red flag law,
right, but
an emergency order of protection, perjury is also against the law too, but it's not prosecuted.
Right.
So, Mr. Brown, we were very, very careful when we constructed the Illinois law to make sure that we did put in protections on that against false claims. Because one of the things that came up repeatedly was, well, what happens if my ex-wife decides to come after me, or my ex-mother-in-law, or somebody, my sister-in-law that just wants to go and make up false things. So we put in a lot of protections to make sure on that. We even went to the point where that would be expunged from your record if a false claim went against you and you had to go and defend yourself. We did not want a record to be on you that you had this order pending against you if it did not follow through. So we were very, very careful, and actually because of that, Illinois has the stellar law that we're actually hoping will go through nationally, because we put in as much due process as we possibly could onto that. Now, I do want to address one brief thing on the suicides. I was reading in today's paper that suicides over the last 10 years are up 41%. And that is horrible. And that is reflective on a variety of things that come through society. But one of the things that some of my colleagues and I have tried to address is first responder suicide. And that's certainly something that's very important to me. And we have seen in the city of Chicago the epidemic rate of that. And there's a couple of tricky things that we have to deal with that when we're looking at it. Yes, police officers have access to their firearms. Yes, many of them do not go for help. Well, why don't they? Because they're afraid that they're going to lose their job, and because they go for it. Part of it is a macho thing, but part of it too is if they go for help and somebody reports them, they can lose temporary access to their FOIA card and access to that. So we've been working very diligently to try to find a middle ground so that people can get the help they need, where it will not affect their access to, especially to a gun, if that's their livelihood and that's their work. And so we're working on that. We have a task force that's done that. We put in some protections in the law that says that that's not an automatic rejection of your FOIA card, and certainly if that gun is something that you need as part of your livelihood. So this is someplace that I think shows very strongly on how we can find a middle ground. I think we all want to make sure that people that need the mental health help or need whatever they need have access to it, but it certainly doesn't affect their livelihood either.
So I want to get back on that red flag law question for just a second, because I'm spending all my current time going around the state talking to police agencies, prosecutors, and courts about our new red flag law, the firearms restraining order. There's a question that got submitted earlier, and you may be getting to it, but what bugs us the most about the other side, right? So one of the questions that's being asked is what bugs each of us
the most about the other side?
About the argument that the other side makes. And I'll tell you what bugs me the most about it, and that is that the folks on the two-way, the enthusiast side, whoever you want to consider yourselves, take the national message, uncritically in many cases, and broadcast it as if it were the truth. And the statistics, look, Mr. Brown, I apologize for disrespect to you by speaking over you, But the point is, what you said was just not true. Our law has strong due process built into it. Our law has strong penalties if someone seeks a malicious firearms restraining order. Our law is temporary and a civil process, not a criminal process. If you have a firearms restraining order served on you, you are then subject to a civil process. You have no permanent prohibition against you. And if it's found to be false, that record gets wiped out and all of it gets sealed. And in fact, at the end of a firearms restraining order, when it's all done and the court records get sealed after 3 years, in any event, there's no permanent disability that accrues to that. So all I'm saying is, I would like all of you who are consider yourselves to be Second Amendment advocates, I would like you to really try to read these laws. Moment, please. Thank you. I appreciate you doing for me what I didn't do for you. Read the laws, understand them, and one last thing. There's a chestnut in the National Rifle Association panoply of chestnuts, and one of them is, we don't want any new laws, we need to enforce the laws that are on the books. Well, guess what? We didn't have a law that addressed this. And I can tell you as a former police officer, and if there's any other former cops in here, you know this is true too. You've gone someplace and someone's asked you to do something and you have no law to do it. I can't help you with that threat, ma'am. That your husband hasn't done anything wrong. Your boyfriend hasn't committed a crime yet. I can't take any official action yet. Well, we have prevented that now. We've got something for the police in this state to do when they come and say, somebody is off their nut and they've got guns and we need to take a look.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to kick in those doors. And one last thing about this, just one last thing, because I've heard this before. There's not going to be SWAT teams coming and kicking the doors. This is 90% across the country, a soft civil process where a couple of sheriff's deputies come and knock on your door and hand you a piece of paper like they would an eviction notice and say, you got to get rid of your guns in 24 hours and prove it to me. If it's an emergency, and my experience thus far in this state has been, there have been 6 emergency pros served in DuPage County. And all of them resulted when the police were called because somebody's family member was acting up in some way that gave them cause. They were threatening to hurt themselves or someone else. The police went, they interviewed the person that was supposed to be causing a problem. They froze the home, they got an emergency fro, and they took the guns away. That's happened now in just very close to us in DuPage County 6 times. And one last thing, in Normal, we have a shining example of how this is supposed to work. The Normal police went to a man's home. He was on, he had finished a hip surgery, and he was on a bunch of meds, and his meds were off, unbalanced, something he was hallucinating badly. A gun owner, family was concerned, they talked to the police took the guns, fast forward, he's got all his guns back, he went to the court, he went to the judge, he talked to the judge said, yes, I think you're fine now, you can have your firearms back, sir. I will send that to anybody that wants it, and for those of you that don't have my email address, it's mjones@ichv.org. I will send you examples of this. One other thing on the front, we have a website called speakforsafety.il. I know, I keep saying one more thing. Speakforsafetyil.org. This is an unbranded, not Democrat, not Republican website. It's only about the firearms restraining order. It gives everyone the tools they need.
Information is at the table.
And there's information at the table, says my colleague Sarah, that you can pick up on these things. So, with that, I give the rest of my time to Mr. Brown.
I get what you're saying about penalties, but penalties without enforcement is what? And that's part of the problem. It's easy to say that there are penalties built within the law, but if there's no enforcement, what do you have? If only the state police, being the administrator of these laws, right, were expedient about restoring someone's rights as they are quickly about punishing someone who does not turn in their firearms, maybe there could be some type of, leeway or understanding in that, because the state police is not as quick to restore someone's FOIA card. And I can tell you, I just personally went through this, and I'm not speaking to something I cannot prove if called to do so. I had to reach the firearms bureau chief and the director of the state police himself just to enforce a court order. So if they are not enforcing or they are not carrying out the laws that you all are writing, and then it's hard to sometimes reach the state representatives. It's sometimes hard to reach the state police. You reach the Firearms Services Bureau's technical support. How many of you all have heard that before? Did we hear that ad nauseum? You know, it's got to change, you know, and then I can't even file suit in the courts because pursuant to, say, Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, I don't have an entitlement because I can't even claim that there's a property interest that I have and that I don't have an entitlement, that my 14th Amendment due process rights were violated because I don't have an entitlement to such redress. I don't have an entitlement to that. So where's the benefit that I have to have my firearm rights restored? Because I need this for my profession. You know, we lose money because of that. I'm sure some of you all understand that.